Okay, everybody, we are going to go ahead and get started. It's not too late to let your network know what we got going on over here. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Sarah R.H. Brooks, and I am the principal founding consultant of Brazen Works Consulting. Brazen Works Consulting Ltd. is our mission is to be a catalyst for systemic change through having hard conversations or courageous conversations and unique experiences. With today's climate, we have some hard conversations that we're having. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce a good friend of mine. Actually, before I do that, I want to do some housekeeping stuff. So this webinar is going to be recorded. It will be posted online after it has been recorded. There is a Q&A at the bottom. So if you have a question, you can put the question in there or you could throw it in the chat. I will be monitoring the chat as well. This is part 2 of the Know Your Rights virtual panel. There was so much amazing feedback for our guest speaker, and people had more questions for him. So he was open to doing a second one. So I'm really happy to. I'm really happy for that, really thankful and appreciative of that. So without further ado, I want to introduce my guest speaker. My guest speaker goes by the name of Price. He is an incredible friend of mine. I've literally known this man for 25 years. A person of integrity, a person who works very hard to hold to his word, and someone who is for our people and for the community. And he is a former police officer from the Atlanta Police Department. Now he is a thriving entrepreneur who works in executive protection, keeping some of our favorite celebrities safe on a daily basis, which is, I'm sure, challenging at times, but he does a great job at it. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Price. Hello, sir. How you doing?
How's it going? Good. Good evening to you. Salutations.
Good. So I would like for you to just share a little bit about your professional experience for the people who are just tuning in, who didn't tune in to the last panel.
Gotcha. So I was a police officer for the City of Atlanta Police Department for 10 years, where I was able to work as a patrol officer, as well as on a discretionary unit, popularized in Atlanta music, and I guess you can say. And we were known for chasing drugs and violent criminals, and we were in works in the city for quite some time. That unit has been disbanded, but yeah, I got a chance to serve on that unit, and it was quite the challenge while I was on there. That's for sure.
Can you tell me how long were you a police officer?
10 years.
And what made you go into that profession?
So interestingly enough, one of our family friends out in San Francisco area was viciously murdered. And when that happened, I literally moved about 2 to 3 weeks later after that situation happened. And I made a decision saying that I wanted to separate myself from the violence that I was experiencing or seeing. And also because he was so young. So when I moved to Atlanta, I started off, really just getting a taste of the climate, things of that nature. And they were hiring for the police department. And so I decided to put in my app. And my reasoning was I wanted to infiltrate the system. That was my whole reasoning for being a police officer, infiltrating the system and work from the inside of the system and hopefully affecting people on the outside of the system, or the people that were the recipients of the system. And so, yeah, it was, probably wasn't the reason that the people hiring me would have wanted to hear. But so I kept that under wraps. So that's why I said infiltrate the system and have my own way of talking to my fellow Black people, the younger people in particular. I wanted to get the Black men that were wanting to be the gangsters, but they got good grades in school. You want to be the gangster, but you are trying to rob people. You want to be the, So you are robbing people, right? But
Mhm.
that's not really what you should be doing. And you want to be you're more talented in areas of your academics and and your your sports. So I wanted them to stay focused on that stuff instead of trying to perpetrate and be somebody else.
Right. Okay. Awesome. So can you tell me a little bit about why you left the police force?
Yes, my only reason for leaving the police department was I did not agree with how my black men were being treated and how I was a part of the system that was enforcing these, extra extreme versions of compliance, extreme versions of abuse, violating people's rights. And when Mark Brown,
Mike Brown?
Mike
Yep.
Brown and Trayvon Martin were murdered, I literally was on the front lines at the beginning of the protests in Atlanta, in riot gear, everything. So I was looking face to face with black men that looked like me, or even youth that had my same skin color, and I was seeing them look back at me with kind of like this pain in their eyes, like you look like me, but you are representing something that is against me.
Yeah.
So I had to make a decision right in that moment that I was done with it, and I did.
Okay. All right. Was that a difficult decision for you to make?
Nope.
Okay.
I put in my 2-week notice and didn't look back.
Awesome. Okay. And so can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now?
So right now, in the private sector, own a personal protection company. Some people may know as executive protection or bodyguard work. It's all the same. They encompass a lot of the same skill sets. And I'm now the head of security for Cardi B.
Okay. Yes. Yes, you are. And you do a great job at what you do. Okay. So um, the last panel, so just so the people who are new to this call, just so I can give you some background. So I've known Price again for 25 years, and we had some private conversations about the protests and the riots and just the political climate that we're in. And I was feeling discouraged because I'm residing with someone who has underlying health issues, and so I couldn't participate in the protests. The COVID numbers are going up and all these other things, and so we were having a private conversation, and then I saw him do a live on Instagram where he was just kind of talking about some of what's been going on, the George Floyd
Right.
case, the Rayshard Brooks case,
Right.
how the police bank on us not knowing our rights. And I was watching you have these conversations with other people, and I thought, what are my gifts? What are the things I'm just naturally talented at? I'm naturally talented at maintaining relationships, and I'm naturally talented at bringing people together. And I felt like my network and the networks of the people who I know needed to have this information. And so we pulled together this panel, and there were so many questions for you. Even after the panel, I got a lot of feedback saying, hey, I have these other questions that need to be answered, and like,
Right.
how can we do this? So I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for
Yeah, no
agreeing to
problem.
do
No
this
problem.
again.
It's my pleasure.
And I'm going to ask a couple of questions that we went over last time, just because there's new people on the call and I want them to
Okay.
be able to hear those answers. For those of you who are signing in, this call is being recorded, or this webinar is being recorded. So if you have a question, go ahead and put it in the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen, and I'll make sure that we get to it. So we talked a little bit about officers banking on you not knowing your rights. What are some things that you would say? How would you advise people to be able to know their rights and assert their rights when being engaged by law enforcement?
Right. So first and foremost, I will say this. Most officers are banking on you not knowing your rights. Period. I'm banking on you not being well equipped with the knowledge that it takes to defend yourself from me and my questions or my investigation. Number one, if an officer doesn't include from the beginning reading you your Miranda rights and reading those Miranda rights in its entirety to its fullest extent, verbatim. Do not say anything. Do not ask a question, or do not answer their questions. As well as another piece of advice I gave was any police encounter, you need to, if you can, ask for a supervisor to be dispatched to your local location, wherever you are. Any physical locations that you can point out in your area, that would be the best thing at keeping the accountability on the upscale. Reason being is most officers know that when a police officer is there by themselves, they're only accountable to themselves and your words against theirs. Okay. So if you take it to the next level and you have a supervisor, whether it be a sergeant, a lieutenant, or a captain, they will up the, so to speak, up the accountability to work in your favor. And okay. That officer is not going to be able to violate your rights as you thought they were, or they thought they were. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned in the last call that when you get pulled over, the best thing to do was to dial in 911. Why did you?
Yes.
Why did you think that? Why did you say that? I'm sorry.
So, and this is coming from the other side of things, like I said, with accountability being the foremost, because it's not going to be only what can happen then. I want my people to be protected for the long haul, or in the future. So if you have this contact with police, you dial 911, put it on speakerphone, and put it on the top of your dash. That way, another accountability layer has been added to that police officer citizen encounter. And now you're on a recorded line.
Got it.
On that recorded line, you then ask for the supervisor. And now the supervisor not only hears it, because they're monitoring the dispatcher's radio traffic, but also that recorder is hearing and taking note of the fact that you're asking for that other supervisor to come to that location.
Got it. Thank you. So, I saw an article by CNN. They released the recorded, I don't want to say manuscript, I don't know what it's called, but they released the recording of the 911 officer who was monitoring the George Floyd situation when he was killed.
Right.
And one of the things that I noticed was that she said verbatim, you can call me a snitch or whatever, but something is happening. Nobody has contacted me and asked me for a supervisor. I think they need help.
Exactly.
So what's your response to that?
So that's in a nutshell right there. That's actually implementing what I'm saying in my advice when it comes to police and citizen interactions, is that a supervisor knows and is very, very privy to the SOPs and the policies and procedures of that department. And because they just had to be tested on them recently, or whenever the last time they had to take that test, it's fresh in their mind. So they're not going to violate nor bear witness to the violation of your rights or the abuse or excessive force. So that dispatcher supervisor saw something that she knew was out of the ordinary, because she deals with these kind of things every day, and she's able to articulate into the exact words as to what is wrong with the situation. This scenario is not supposed to be playing out the way it is. And so she advised as she saw.
Got it. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay. So there was a question that just came in, the question and answer. And it kind of is a great segment into the next question. What are the tips you can share when being stopped or investigated by police? And the question that actually came in was, if an officer stops you and doesn't make known what crime you have committed, or they are detaining you without informing you, how should I, as a Black man, respond?
All right. So first and foremost, I'm going to say compliance, compliance, compliance. Cool. Once you have shown and the officer is bearing witness to your compliance, there's nothing that they can actually say is the reason why they're escalating the situation or escalating their ladder of force or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So hear me when I say that, compliance, because you don't want to give them any ammunition, so to speak, to be able to corroborate their recollection of the events. For them to say later on, oh, he was being belligerent, he or she was being belligerent, he or she wasn't listening to my verbal commands. So yes, listen from the beginning, and adhere to their commands, but also those layers of accountability are very, very important. And that your recording and your actual attention to detail is going to be important for later on. See, I want my people to live now or live in that situation. So you trying to be the judge and the jury at that point would be counterproductive to your survival and counterproductive to your articulation of things later on. If you have to take the stand or have to, fight this case in court. So.
Okay. So how do you assert your rights if you feel like your rights are being violated, right? So if the officer doesn't tell me why I'm being pulled over, if they don't tell me why I'm being detained, if they haven't read my Miranda rights, what do you do in that situation?
So you need to, at that moment, give them exactly what they're asking for, or the things that in the United States of America, to operate a motor vehicle, you need two things. Two things. You need to have your license or your ID that shows that you're able to operate a motor vehicle. And then number two, the car is registered. Obviously, if it's registered, you need to have some kind of insurance, correct? Or vice versa. Nowadays, you have apps that you can save or show your insurance carrier and your policy number, the registration, all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't give the officer more than what they're asking. Give them and show them, hey, you need my license and registration, right? Here you go. License and registration, or license and insurance and registration, whatever it is, you're showing them that. By the, in United States, policies are here to protect, or laws in the Constitution are here to protect you and your vehicle. Your vehicle is an extension of your house. The Fourth Amendment states that me as a citizen, I should feel safe against all unlawful searches and seizures. So if that officer asks you to step out the car with the keys in your hand, lock the door. Lock the door. If they want to get inside, sorry, officer, I do know that you have to present me with a search warrant, and in that search warrant is going to stipulate what you find, or what we were looking for, and in what reason you're looking for it. Also, with your glove compartment in your trunk, no, they can't go in there unless they have a search warrant. They are locked. Period. Okay. So you can say, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. I was going to say, and I've never personally experienced this outside of drug raids, which I believe you have to have a search warrant for. But what about when an officer comes to your home and they force their way in or block the door from being closed?
Right. So the only way that I can do that is if it's a forcible felony, there's a crime in progress, or I have a reasonable suspicion that a crime is or about to be committed.
That's pretty vague. That's some gray area on that last one.
It's vague, but it's very specific. It's vague, but specific.
Tell me more.
So, did you have to open the door? No, you didn't have to open the door. You could have spoke to the officer through the window. Right?
Okay, so you don't have to open the door just because an officer is at the door.
At all.
I don't think everybody knows that.
No, you don't know that. We do what we see on TV, or what we've been taught, or the misguided information that we've gathered along the journey in our life. But we are protected by the Fourth Amendment against unlawful searches and seizures. Okay? So a vehicle if I'm asking you to step out of your vehicle, or if I'm stopping your vehicle, that's a case of a seizure, right? It's a seizure. But I can only stop that vehicle based on a traffic infraction, you running a red light, you having a broken tail light, anything of that nature, or I run your plates and it's come back stolen. That's the only way I can lawfully stop that vehicle, which is why in the case of, and I know I'm going back to what we stated originally with the vehicle stoppage, when you have your vehicle stopped, and they tell you what you were stopped for, whether it was a broken tail light or not having insurance, I'm sorry, y'all, but my recommendation is to get that citation. Get that citation, because that's the only way you're going to hold them accountable to the reason why they stopped you. So either you're going to call bullshit on it, either I was in violation or not.
Okay.
Because when I was a police officer, the reason why I would stop vehicles, I just want to get in your damn car. I'm trying to get in your car. The person that got stopped for running a red light after you saw 10 people running it, the only reason why that officer is stopping that person, he or she, is because they're banking on that being the honey hole. They're banking on that being they got some dope in the car, some guns, suspended license, warrants.
So
it wasn't just because you were.
Are officers taught to profile?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
For sure. And I was taught by the best.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, we are taught to not only profile by race, but also vehicle make and model, the physical enhancements of the vehicle, whether it be rims, tinted windows, loud sound systems, things of that nature. And it sounds so crazy. It sounds so crazy, but we were taught in the academy that chances are 9 times out of 10, you're going to find something that's going to be in the violation of some laws or city ordinances that may then lend themselves to find other things like drugs, guns, and stuff like that.
Okay. All right. There's another question that came in. With no vehicle violation present, no tints, no lights out, no speeding, etc., can a patrol car run your tags? Yes. Okay.
We can run your tags anytime they want to. Not a cop anymore, so I can't say we. They can run them anytime they want to. Not only limited to patrol officers or only traffic police. It also is, discretionary units, narcotics units, things like that.
Okay. Are male officers allowed to pat down women when they're pulled over?
Not in the state of Georgia.
Okay.
So I cannot speak on every department. However, I do like my freedom, or I did like my freedom as a police officer. So I don't want a female officer to complain about I accidentally groped her or forcefully groped her any kind of way or made her feel uncomfortable. And no. So in the City of Atlanta Police Department, we were, it was written in our SOPs that police officers that were on duty, if it was, we came in contact with a female citizen or driver, we had to then call a female officer.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for that. So, depending on what state you're on, there's people on here from a bunch of different states. So, so depending on what state you're in, you need to know. Can you tell me what a SOP is? You said that before in our last panel, and I don't know what a SOP is. So I'm
Standard
assuming
operating procedures.
Okay. All right.
Standard operating procedures. It's just a fancier word, or it was a word used in our police department to just speak on and articulate the policies and procedures of a specific department.
Okay.
Their bylaws and things of that.
Okay. Thank you. What is a reasonable amount of time to be stopped by an officer if you're not being detained? And if once you realize that time has passed and you're not being detained, are you free to just walk away?
So I do have to just interject a little. That is the detainment. So can you hear me?
No, you're breaking up a little bit.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so I got to add a little bit more verbiage to there because that is the detainment. The detainment means that I know and you have advised me that I am free to go. A detainment means I can lawfully walk away after a reasonable amount of time. So meaning I'm not under arrest. I haven't been formally charged with any crime. So I'm able to go after a certain reasonable amount of time. And that's about 15 minutes. Now, sometimes detainment includes standing or getting outside of your vehicle, or it may include handcuffs.
Okay.
But it is a detainment, meaning you're not under arrest.
Mm-hmm.
Not under arrest.
Okay.
So you will be able to leave in 15 minutes.
So,
But that's why that accountability is so important, that you have invited another layer into the equation, namely the 911 dispatcher, as well as the police officer's supervisor.
Okay. So after our virtual panel last week, I was having a conversation with someone who was on the call, and his question was, what he said to me was, it sounds like when I get pulled over, jumping out the car is the way to go. Have my ID, my insurance, jump out the car, turn it off, lock it, and stand there and let the police do their investigation. What is your take on that?
I'm not sure, where he got that interpretation from, but safely speaking about the words that I said last week, I'm going to re-inform and re-advise everything. So, stopping your vehicle, listening for any verbal commands over the officer's PA system. If they don't tell you to get out the car, stay in the car.
Okay.
Unless your reason for getting out the car was that you had something illegal in there.
So, okay.
so if something was illegal in there and you jump out the car prematurely, then you leave yourself at risk of getting your rights violated, because you're acting
suspicious,
what an officer would describe as suspicious or belligerent. Either way, because that's not what a normal citizen does.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying? So if we're in the process of, or we're in the game of wanting our citizens our people to be better armed with knowledge, I definitely would advise just jumping out the car. Although the benefits of jumping out the car are that they can't search the car, but it still puts you in another situation that you may not have been ready for.
Okay. So one of the participants wants to know, are you fearful of sharing this information?
No.
Okay.
It's all information that everybody could know already.
Okay.
You could know if you look for it, if you have a police officer that's in your family or anybody that's in your close network that is honest with you. Mm-hmm. Because none of this is violating any laws. All of this is arming yourself with your rights.
Right.
So your ignorance of it, or past ignorance of it, now that you know the information, can better equip you in the future. That's all it is.
Okay.
These just are rights that I'm talking about. Pure rights that other races of people act out every day. But we have been taught systemically to suppress and not even seek after our own rights and act on them.
Okay. Thank you. You're glitching up a little bit. I'm not sure what's going on there.
Let me see.
So while Price is
you now?
Yep. Okay. So just for anybody who's joined the call, this webinar is being recorded. If you have questions, you can put them in the question and answer box at the bottom, and I'm monitoring that. I'm also monitoring the chat. If you have the ability to send messages to the panelists and to the participants if you would like to. So I just wanted to make that clear. Okay, so the next question that came in was a question about detainment. Does the officer have to be clear with why they are detaining you? So do they have to tell you why they're making you stay there?
Yes.
Okay, and if they're not?
Be crystal clear.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
if they do not advise you that, ask for that supervisor. When the supervisor gets there, ask them why you're being detained. Because the officer has not only articulated his reasoning for detaining you to the 911 dispatcher, but also the police officer's supervisor has been made or took note of that detainment and the reason being why.
Okay. So don't argue with them, just ask for the supervisor.
Like I said, it is not time. although your rights have probably been violated, keeping the notation of the details that are going to work in your favor for later is very key.
Okay.
Because if you can hold them accountable later on to the things that they did past tense, the written reprimands come, the behavioral reprimands come based on the policies and procedures that they probably violated, as well as your rights. Right. Your constitutional rights were violated. So you being able to keep track of that is very important.
So this is kind of off topic, but, and I don't know if you even know how to answer this. So I was thinking about this earlier, and I thought, I made a post and I said citizens' rights. Do citizens' rights extend to dreamers?
Meaning?
So if someone is pulled over and they're not a citizen, right? Mm-hmm. So whether or not they can show, thank you, Kyra. If they're undocumented, I was searching for the word. Okay. So if they're undocumented, right, but they're compliant, but then they're being violated solely on the fact that they're undocumented, which is hard to prove, but if they're being compliant, why are they being violated, right? Do those Fourth Amendment rights, and do those rights extend to undocumented persons in our country?
I'm not exactly sure if they extend to those persons, that are undocumented. Mm-hmm. But because if I'm a police officer, I'm going to involve another level of accountability. I'm going to get a supervisor there. I'm going to get, Border Patrol there, things of that nature, so that I'm not sitting here guessing, as to, what to do with this person that I'm detaining at that moment. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so I don't want to go further than that.
Okay, thank you. No, thank you. That was helpful. So we have a few more questions that came in. One of them, what advice would you give to a Black person who is 100% compliant, but the officer is racist and harming you in the process? Should you defend yourself?
So this is only for my Black people.
Okay.
That's a very slippery slope. Very slippery slope. And I feel like, like I said, with accountability, I'm gonna keep going back to that words. And some of these answers will seem redundant, but the reason being is I want to harp on the fact that you're trying to get out of the situation, or you're trying to survive the situation that you're currently in, which could be an illegal search or seizure, right? That person is violating your rights. That person is beating up on you. I understand that. But if you also are factoring in that you've asked for why you've been detained or, stopped, you have that person's body cam that's going, but also you have the supervisor on their way, and you have the 911 call dispatcher that hopefully, as I advised earlier, that you put on speakerphone, and it's saying out loud, I'm compliant, I'm listening, I'm doing. Those are things that if you look at every police officer involved violation of other people's rights, you hear the officer saying, stop resisting, stop resisting. You know the reason why they're saying that? Because what you hear is what you're going to believe. And so, we were taught that. So if you can use those same verbiages in the same manner while you're complying and saying, I'm not compliant, my hands behind my back, saying all those things will help you later on.
Saying I'm not resisting, yeah.
Yes. Yep. We were taught that in the academy to articulate and give those verbal commands, because I can hide what I'm doing while I'm telling you what you are doing or not doing. You're resisting, or when I'm saying you stop resisting, you may not be resisting. You may not be at all.
Mm-hmm. So I saw a video a while ago of a police officer who he did like this YouTube video or something, and he was saying that whole premise is false, because if you punch somebody, if you hit somebody, right, it is their natural biological, physiological response to flinch up or to try to cover or protect themselves or fight. And so if you hit them and you yell, "Stop resisting," they literally physiologically cannot stop resisting.
Yeah.
They're going to
it's an asinine command. It really is.
Okay.
It makes no sense. But most of those officers are hiding their motive, by exercising certain body compliant restraint holds, such as, but not limited to, bending your wrist in a way that would now agitate your body in such a way that it wants to, retreat from that pain, or sliding the handcuffs over that nice little vein over your wrist, which was also a taught practice in the academy. And so, asking somebody to comply with that, you're doing that on purpose. You're doing that on purpose to get a reaction, which then can give you justification for escalating the ladder of force that you're bestowing on that citizen. So, a lot of these things and a lot of these injuries, are going to be sustained on people that unjustly. Number one, in the situation, I want them to live to tell that story, though. Live to get to the next situation of or lay of accountability. So then when that supervisor comes onto the scene, they're able to say, I was listening. What was I doing wrong? You can check my video. You can ask the 911 dispatcher. They got the whole thing on video recording. Things of that nature. And I'm not saying this is the end all be all.
Right.
But I am saying,
but it's a start.
Give it more. Yes.
Right.
More information.
I'm curious about that. But before I ask this next question, a question came in the chat. Just to confirm, the recommendation for any traffic stop is to dial 911, request a supervisor, and leave your phone on the dashboard. I'm saying
any interaction with the police, period, that you have enough time. And I'm not saying digging in your pocket and all that kind of stuff while they running up on you. I didn't say all that. Just put this into context. What I am saying is, if you have viable enough time, you see them lights in your rearview mirror, dial 911, put that thing on the dash, stop. That's plenty of time for them to pick up. Plenty of time for you to say, "Hey, I'm by this McDonald's over here. I'm on 3rd and Newcomb, okay? And I need a supervisor, please, because in this environment of police is violating citizens' rights and my constitutional rights, I need another layer of accountability here at my location."
Okay. So if you do that, are you required to notify them that you've dialed 911?
You can. It would be in their best interest. It would be in your best interest to say yes.
So it's kind of
Officer Jordan, I've called 911. I gave them my specific location, and the supervisor is coming here. And I'm not going to get all into extra jargon and everything. You just say, simply me, because I'm scared of you guys. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how this is going to end up. I thought I was in compliance with every traffic law, and my vehicle's complying with everything in the state of California or whatever it is. So what am I in violation of? Now wait, because your supervisor's coming. Here you go.
I'm going to hold off on my question and ask a question from the chat. If I have a firearm with the appropriate license, how should I proceed if stopped by an officer?
All right. So in places like the state of Georgia, it is an open carry state, period. So I'm going to, just because I want to be a good citizen, advise you that I am a licensed firearm carrier. I can lawfully carry a weapon. It is here in my glove compartment. It's here on my seat. It's under my leg. It's under the seat. It's, in the trunk, wherever it is.
Okay.
And you're just saying that I used to do it as a professional courtesy, but a citizen can do it just to notify them so that, they're not left guessing, or they're seeing, oh, this guy is being forthcoming, or he or she is being forthcoming with, what they possess in their car.
Okay. So, I have to bring this up. Philando Castile.
Okay.
He said, I'm licensed to carry.
Yeah.
And he was shot.
Right.
Um,
So,
Help
like I
me.
said, all this information isn't the end all be all. People are still, officers are still, or could still
Right,
violate your and my rights.
right.
All I'm,
So go
go ahead,
ahead.
go ahead. So in that situation, he was saying all the necessary things to disarm himself in the way that they wouldn't feel that he had to jump on them.
Right. And I feel like in the CPO classes, they teach you that, right? They teach
Mhm.
you that because you're carrying, when you're engaged by law enforcement, you do XYZ things. And personally, I just feel for Black people, Black men specifically, it's a different set of rules, right?
Of course it
Um,
is. Of course it is.
and I know in Michigan, I know somebody was pulled over uh, and their license to carry, and it was connected to their license plate. So before the
Mhm.
police officer even approached the car, they called for backup. Is that something that's like a normal practice?
You said what? You said the police officer called for backup?
Yeah, before they even
Yeah, yeah,
approached
yeah.
the car,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
because they knew that the person driving
Right,
the car could be armed.
right, right, right.
And
Yeah,
that's normal.
that's normal. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So just like people want to go home, police officers want to go home too.
Yeah.
So they're in the business, and this is not. I'm not calling all police officers bad.
Mm-hmm.
So people, good officers want to go home at night. So
Right.
they're going to create another layer of not only accountability, but backup, for lack of a better term, to ensure or raise the stakes to in their favor so that they can make sure that they get home the way they left.
That makes
And
sense.
it's not just a female officer. No, if I'm an officer, I want to back up my fellow uh, coworker because I want to assure that he or she goes home the same way they left. And the
Absolutely.
way of doing that is to be accountable to, if I see them, I'm stopping, or I'm wait for them to dispatch me there.
Okay. So do you have an opinion on the iPhone feature or command that automatically records and emails video footage using the verbal command, Siri, I'm being pulled over?
If that works, then yes, that's a beautiful thing.
Okay. I know that,
But I wouldn't stop at that. I mean, it's a great tool, but I'm in the process of efficiency. I'm in the I want to hear or use the most efficient ways. So yeah, that's a good thing.
mhm,
But if I can get the supervisor there as well as notifying the 911 dispatcher, you know, because people can throw away phones, they can, officers can kick it
right.
or destroy it. You know,
Okay. So I want to go back to my question. Um, when someone dials 911, how does the 911 dispatcher have video?
how do they have video?
Yes. How, like, when I think, so I know they have the recording of the call, but how was that dispatcher able to see what was happening?
They weren't able to see what was happening, um, but if they do have a video investigation center where they're able to monitor traffic cameras, physical structure cameras, things of that nature, they can pinpoint where he or she or whatever vehicle has been stopped, or where a citizen has been stopped. But other than that, they don't have any you know video surveillance other than, and not even the body cam. The body cam isn't made privy, or the footage on the body cam isn't made privy until it's downloaded, at the precinct. So yeah, they don't have
So
any video footage
so
real
911
time.
911 dispatchers don't have access to body cam footage in
No,
real time.
nobody does real time.
Oh, got it. Okay.
It's downloaded. Yeah, it's downloaded.
Awesome.
There's no network, but there are cameras that are in our vehicles, but they also have to be downloaded as well.
Got it. Okay. All right. Now you talked a little bit about how to handle if your rights are being violated. Now, in the case of George Floyd, many people stood around. You and I had a private conversation about this, but we also
Mhm.
talked about this on the last panel. People stood around and they videotaped. When you see someone else's rights being violated, how do you respond to that? What should you do as a citizen?
So what I would do is not only starting taking mental notes of the details of the encounter, but also, if you can, some video footage is always helpful. Calling 911 and getting that dispatcher there to get the supervisor, if they're not already there, if they're not already, a part of the situation, escalate it to getting another supervisor there. Accountability. Also, if you can jot down some kind of notes that you think you'll forget. This person stopped. He was compliant. He wasn't just in your opinion compliant. He was literally compliant. It's not, a situation where they were trying to be resistant. They were not acting belligerent. They were not doing anything that would give the police any right to escalate things or violate this person's civil rights. So, and this is also, I'm just limiting it to you getting physically involved. Okay? Because you don't need that extra attention on you while you're trying to document somebody else getting their rights violated. You don't want to take the heat on, bring it onto you. And now you can't even help that person because you have now, stepped too close, unreasonably close. You've got in the middle of the investigation of the officer. The biggest help you can be is the documentation, either video or, like I said, writing, dictation, something of that nature that you can now, at a safe distance, be able to articulate for later purposes how this person was violated.
Oh, okay. There was a question about how come you don't use your full name, and I was responding that I
use my last name because I want to use my last name. Thank you.
Yeah. So
thank you.
Okay, so there was another question. Yeah, there was another question. Is there such thing as entrapment? Example, sitting down the street from a bar, seeking to pull over any cars leaving the premise.
Yes, of course. Of course. Yeah. It's one of the practices of several, nationwide discretionary units, narcotics units, all those kind of things. I mean, those are common practices that our local law enforcement use. Of course, they're illegal. I mean, yes, it's very illegal, but it's hard, very, very hard to articulate better than law enforcement. Because I can say, due to my knowledge and experience in the field, and then also the countless hours that I spent in the police academy, that 9 times out of 10, or likely than not, or reasonable suspicion, that you're doing what I said you were doing in that time, and I had, no influence on it at all.
Yep. So kind of a continuation of that question. What is the suggestion for a drunk person who wants to sleep it off, take an Uber home, or get in the car later, like in the case of Rayshard Brooks?
So the operating of the motor vehicle is what you want to avoid.
Okay.
Because you don't want it towed, number one. You don't want it impounded. Right. Just for the safekeeping of your valuables in it and all the issues that come with, whatever, proving ownership, all that kind of stuff. Don't get the vehicle. Yes, call Uber. Call a Lyft, call an Uber. And that's avoiding any kind of contact, because the officer can say, oh, I saw you move the vehicle. Mm-hmm. While you were struggling to get into the spot, or you say you hit the curb while you were parking or something like that. That's going to give them the ammo they need to articulate the reasonable suspicion, which is going to corroborate their reasoning or their justification for making contact with you. So if I want to avoid all police contact, and I know I'm drunk, I'm gonna stay in the establishment or wherever, you know, safety is.
Mm-hmm.
Have maybe a family member or somebody come move the vehicle, but I'm not getting in that car because there's
Okay.
in certain jurisdictions or departments, they parked 2-3 blocks away from the club with binoculars.
Wow. Okay.
Oh yeah, this is yeah.
So can
Yeah.
we talk about Rayshard Brooks a little bit in that
Yeah,
situation?
sure. Let's do that specifically. Go ahead.
Um, what what would you have done differently as a citizen?
Okay.
And what would you have done differently as an officer? Now, I have been in a situation where I have fallen asleep at red lights, right? And things like that, just because I was extremely tired. And I probably should not have been driving, but I was
Yeah, we all
tired,
have.
right?
Yeah, we
So,
all have.
and I just couldn't imagine that me falling asleep in my car would result in my family being told that I'm no longer living, right? I just,
Right.
whether I had something to drink or not, it's hard for me to imagine that because I was
Yeah.
asleep in my car, now I'm dead.
And the only justification I can see, because I do recall that the officer requested that he move the vehicle to a parking space. So I don't know if that was a entrapment in a way, or him trying to
Mm,
influence
okay.
for him to then articulate a reason that he can, justify even making contact with Mr. Brooks,
Hmm.
because he was sleeping in a line, and the officer came to the responded to the location because the establishment supervisor or whoever called him.
Hmm.
He then moves it after requested by the officer.
Hmm.
you know so the officer only can say that, okay, the only way that you got onto this property is because you drove
Right.
on it, right?
Right.
So he's trying to justify, he knows that,
Right.
but he's not telling Mr. Brooks that. And so Mr. Brooks said, oh yeah, I was tired. I'm about to move the car. So he moves the car, not knowing that the officer has another ulterior motive as to why he's requesting him to move the car, not just to, get out of the way of the traffic that is in back of him in the
Right.
drive-through window, but he wants to see and then be able to articulate, yep, he was driving. Yep.
Okay.
So,
So he was requested to take a breathalyzer. If
right.
he would have turned that down, how may that have gone differently?
He could have denied and, say, yes, I refuse to take the breathalyzer.
Hmm.
And he could have then he could have been detained at that point.
Okay.
He could have been detained at that point until the officer dispatched, another DUI specific unit, like
Hmm.
Georgia State Patrol,
Okay.
or a supervisor responded.
Hmm.
Mr. Brooks, any citizen can always deny breathalyzer. Always.
Okay.
Always. You still may be arrested for suspicion, but you won't be charged for DUI. You get what I'm saying? So you won't be charged with DUI, but I have to either go down to the jail,
Hmm.
and you're gonna have to breathalyze there, right?
Hmm.
Or you can, that's your two options. Either the detainment, get the other DUI unit there, the supervisor there, and they can either do their testing, their compliance testing, and not just the breathalyzer, because there's other things that they do specific. And the reason why I'm not getting into all those details is because
It
I
can
didn't do
vary.
that specifically. And
Okay.
also, I didn't do that specifically. But
So
go ahead.
there's a question that came in. How can you be arrested on suspicion?
You say what?
How can you be arrested on suspicion? So if I deny the
Right.
breathalyzer test,
Mhm.
I can still be detained because they have to
Right.
give me a breathalyzer test.
So based on, you've seen it on various police officer shows like Cops. You
I
see
was
them
gonna say
walk in
cops.
straight lines. Touch your index finger to your nose.
Hmm.
Follow the officer's fingers. That's not a breathalyzer.
Okay.
So those are other telltale signs that this person, more likely than not, is over the alcoholic limit.
Got it.
No, sorry, the alcohol limit, not alcoholic, alcohol
I
limit.
know what you meant.
while operating a motor vehicle. But the reason why officers do the breathalyzer is because that's what they can use for undisputed evidence for a court.
Okay. So
But
the other thing.
Go back to the officer, because I want to make sure everybody hears this as well.
Okay.
So if I was an officer in the situation of those officers that made contact with Mr. Brooks, all this is transpiring. Once Mr. Brooks, resists arrest enough to gain freedom, he's running. Guess what? I have his license and his vehicle. He's not posing any imminent danger on myself or any other citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Because unbeknownst to Mr. Brooks, he didn't know that he was holding a taser that had already been deployed.
Right.
It had already been used. It was literally not any kind of danger to anyone else. And he's running. I have his ID. So guess what I would do? I want to go home. So I'm going to execute a warrant against him, and that's it. He's going to go to his house. He's going to have to appear in court. If you don't appear in court, they're going to exercise an arrest warrant at his home or wherever license, or I'm sorry, the address that's, attached to his vehicle or on his licenses.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So that contact, not only was it not justified, but it was excessive, just in the sheerness of going after. Okay. But it was the other officers who was not, I think he was dispatched or requested, by the dispatcher to back up that officer. He did the shooting. So I used to love the accountability of just me at my crime scene or traffic stop or all the kind of things. If I, somebody came and they was, trying to help me, hey, Price, you good? I'm good, appreciate you. Because I want to be able to focus on this and not have to run around thinking or hold you to my standards of, I got hands. I done broke both my thumbs and one index finger where people resisting arrest and all that kind of stuff. I like those odds better than taking somebody's life. So if you one of them trigger happy people or officers, I don't want you around.
Right.
So
that's deep. That's deep.
Yep.
So I wanted to ask you a question. In our last panel, one of the things that was said was it's not necessarily illegal to run from the cops. And I asked you a question pertaining to your children, your offspring, and I said, what would you tell your offspring about interacting with the police, how to stay safe interacting with the police? And right. You make kind of like a joke. You said, other than run. And there's that video that went viral of the young man playing basketball and then seeing the police coming down the street and hiding behind his parents' car, and then continuing to play basketball afterwards. And so there was some confusion. Some people had asked me, like, so do I run? Do I not run? Can you give me more information on that?
You're accountable to all your actions.
Mm-hmm.
Accountability is the thing. So if you want to use that as a viable option, then I hope you're training to do so. I hope you running some laps. I hope you got your track shoes on. I hope you're not sitting in the car with your shoes untied. And yeah, I'm making light of it, but while training, and you want to use something else as a viable option, but you're not training or better equipping yourself so that the odds are in your favor, then I wouldn't request it at all. No.
Okay.
So and as far as what I'm telling we'll tell my children, I will tell them that until this is right, until this law enforcement reform has been worked so much in our favor, then you have to be compliant.
Okay. So, the young men that are in my life, I tell them, you, you need to be compliant. We
Yeah.
can complain. We can, if your rights are
Yeah,
violated, we can deal with. And so one of the
for
things
sure.
that came up in the last panel was that right there during that stop is not the time to have court. Like, you are not going to
Right.
have court on the sidewalk with the police officers and win that battle.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
and one of the things that I
Exactly.
had brought up in our last panel was that, Sandra Bland did that. And not to say that she shouldn't have done what she
Yeah. Yeah.
did,
Yeah.
but, she, instead of being quiet, right? Instead of just being quiet and like you said, trying to remember all of the ways that she was being violated for a traffic stop, she was very vocal about her rights, knowing her rights, and I can't wait to see them. I can't wait to see y'all in court. I'm gonna have my day with y'all in court. And sis never got her day in court. They made sure that whoever the powers that be made sure that she did not get to see her day in court, get to see that day in court. And so I know in the last panel, one of the things that you had touched on was really talking. Can you say a little bit to that, please?
Yeah. So you don't necessarily have to give the officers your whole playbook of rights that you know that they're violating or are about to violate.
Mm-hmm.
But the accountability is what you want to arm yourself with at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Just, hey, I'm calling a supervisor, call 911. Officer, this officer now knows that they have some accountability to, answer to. But I don't need to tell them that you're violating my Fourth Amendment right or my Second Amendment right, whatever right it is, that is connected to right there in that moment. Because, like you said, they used that as the thing that they were going to take away from her. They were going to seize that thing away from you. That you know this? Oh, okay. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I'm gonna caution myself, or even using that as some advice to give anybody else. But just in the moments of your interaction with them, just the accountability is what you want to give them at that moment, or whatever piece of paperwork or identification that they've asked for, requested, but nothing else. Don't give them all. They don't need to know that you got a master's degree in criminal law.
Like, you
Criminal
done pulled
procedure.
over the wrong one.
Yeah, no, 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 no. You want to use that for your lawsuit later on.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, there's civil
Okay.
lawsuit, criminal lawsuit. Yeah, all that kind of stuff.
Okay. There's another question along these lines. Do police want to be involved in highly escalated situations? I know that there was a police officer in San Jose recently that was in San Jose, California, that was put on like desk duty because during one of the early protests, he was agitating protesters, and then he was sitting out there kind of like, looking like a video game avatar with his rubber bullet shotgun,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so so do you think that police are looking to be involved in highly escalated
So
incidents?
I will say this. I will say this. We are trained to deal with escalated incidences and to further escalate them. Most officers, if they're not on some kind of specialized unit or discretionary unit,
Mm-hmm.
that they're not only equipped with their limited training from the academy, but specific training, which like SWAT operators are trained on hostage negotiations or barricaded gunmen or situations where kids or just any minor or a pregnant woman is in the vicinity, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they're able to de-escalate the situation or de-arm a person that would, in any other situation, the officer would have escalated it. The officer that is a SWAT operator is able to de-escalate the situation. So to answer your question directly, yes, most officers are trained to handle a crazy situation and to, when it gets crazier, meet that crazy with crazy. Or
Okay.
meet that escalation or as it escalates, we know how to escalate, but we
Okay.
may not know how to walk away.
De-escalate. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, let me let that go. Maybe it's not worth it. Why, that's the case in point why a lot of departments and cities and counties have a no chase policy. So
Oh, okay.
because some of those those, vehicles that are running from the police pose more danger to not only the officers that are involved, but innocent citizens. So let me have no chase policy. No chase. The City of Atlanta Police Department is one of those departments.
No
they cannot
Code 33.
They cannot chase you at all. You could have, no chase policy.
There was a moment in time where I was working at a police station, and I was there doing a Code 33, and that's when I realized that running from the police in a car is not the way to go, because as this car was going through all the different counties and endangering lives, like you said, they were just calling the next sheriff's department, the next police department, getting the helicopter out, and I'm like, they have all these telecommunication devices.
Very highly sophisticated.
Yeah, it's like running away in a car is not the way. Okay, so there's two questions that came in from a panelist. How is use of excessive force quantified and prosecuted? And he just wants to be sure that you're saying police officers are trained to escalate an escalated situation.
No, what I'm saying is they're trained to meet. However the situation has escalated, they're trained on how to meet that escalation that was already there.
Okay.
Not how to escalate it. There's a big difference. So get that soundbite right. They're trained how to meet an already escalated situation. That's a difference. So in the case in point of use of force, now the Supreme Court has shown or granted officers with one ladder above whatever the force that they've already been met with, they can go a step above.
Okay.
So verbal compliance, they can use, no verbal compliance. They can use like OC spray or a taser if you're not listening to those verbal commands. That's just an example. Just an example.
Okay. How is use of excessive force quantified and prosecuted?
I'm not sure exactly how it is. I'm not on the prosecuting side.
Okay.
I was a police officer, so I'm not sure how they were prosecuted.
Okay. I think this is an extension of the last question about wanting to be in escalated situations. Do they want to use their guns?
Do they want to?
Or here, let me do this. What are the procedures and ramifications for officers involved in shootings?
Sorry about that. So when an officer is involved in a shooting, say, for instance, it's not even including a homicide, no one died, that officer's gun or weapon is under investigation.
Okay.
It's seized from them.
Okay.
Reason being is round counts. Did that officer actually fire the same amount of ammunition that he says he did? In a lot of cases in the field, officers have said, man, I shot him twice, shot him 3 times, or shot at them 3 times. They emptied out the whole clip. Because a lot of happens in that situation. A lot of people, put up, just these blinders that they weren't anticipating. Things kind of slow down when you're in a heightened situation. And, I see a question coming up. Sorry, distracted me. So yeah, first their gun is under investigation, and then they're usually on administrative or desk duty, while they're investigating, while the department, or in the case of the Atlanta Police Department, we have the GBI, and they would investigate all police officer involved shootings, period, point blank. Also, if an officer has committed has killed or neutralized this or a threat, and they've, that person is pronounced dead, it's a homicide. It's a homicide. It's not like it's like a special term for when a police officer, kills somebody. It's still a homicide. Still a homicide investigation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Period. Still a homicide.
Okay. All right. I was going to ask you, I want to go back to the question about, and then this will segue into the next question. We talked a little bit about what do you do when you see other people's rights being violated? How do you get involved? And I think back to the video of the young boys that were being held by gunpoint by that one officer. It was a group of young men, and I know we talked about this on the last call. And the community came out and they were angry, like, why are you holding these boys? Like, put your gun down. They're being compliant. Put your gun down. Put your gun down.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a couple different ways that the officer could have gone with that.
Yep.
But what is your take on, I honestly, I have to be honest, I have to speak my truth. If I was driving down the street and I saw an officer pointing a weapon at a bunch of young men, I would pull over and I would pull out my phone and I would start taping and I would start asking questions. What is going on? Why are they being held at gunpoint? I would be asking, I would be one of those people yelling at the officer, like, why are you holding them at gunpoint? And I know that at some point that could be considered like a distraction or impeding the investigation. I think the officer handled it very well once you saw the other side from his body cam.
Yeah.
But what is your take on something like that?
As a citizen, from a citizen standpoint?
As a citizen, yes. Like,
yeah.
What should citizens do when they see things like that? Like, it doesn't look right. I may not have the whole story. It doesn't look right, and I'm not okay with just driving past it.
So take some pictures real quick. Take some pictures. Get on that 911 call. Ask for that supervisor.
Okay.
Then get back to videotaping or taking some more pictures.
Okay.
Every piece of evidence could possibly help. So I don't even want to rule out the possibility of something helping.
Right. Okay.
Those pictures and or video footage could help that person or those people later on.
That's
it could help get that specific. It could help that specific officer get fired, and then that could be one less officer who, after the investigation was done, and the department said, yeah, he violated all these oaths and everything, or policies and procedures. That's grounds to get that person terminated. So now you have one less officer on the street who poses a threat to the safety of your rights and your well-being.
Okay. That's a really great point. Thank you for sharing that. What is your take on community policing? And is it a method of citizen-involved accountability?
No. I think the burden of accountability is on the police departments.
Okay.
Period. Because while I was, known as the jump out boy who was, chasing these people and rappers and all that kind of stuff, I was in the streets making the relationships, buying haircuts for some of the dudes on the corner boys, or buying pizzas for some of the kids on the street. Not to play, play and everything. No, this could be their only depiction of an officer who's positive and who is not going to violate my rights and is not just around when somebody's committing a crime. How can I better understand the people that I'm serving unless I'm in the streets or wherever it is? If I'm in their communities, that I can actually learn the people. Who own the barbershop? Who own the liquor store? Who is the pastor? Who is the grandma that I see? She always coming around this same block at 5 o'clock carrying groceries. I'll just go help them. If I'm not on the call, let me go help her get the groceries in the house.
Right.
Those things like that help police officers better understand the citizens that they serve, as well as the citizens. They're like, oh, you're not just here to be this tyrant or be this what's that called? Thing that for the judge,
the gavel.
I don't know what that thing is called.
The gavel.
Yeah. I'm not here. I'm not here for that. So how do I prove that? By gaining the respect from the actions that I do. In most minority-based communities, you get respect by giving respect.
Right.
But in academy, we taught that, oh no, you only finna assert the respect that you better have from me. Whether I, when you was a parent, you got a kid, right? Or when you was a child yourself, and you looking at your parents, they saying, no, you better respect me.
Mm-hmm.
And then they learned as you got older that the respect goes both ways. So now as adults, as police officers have to understand that the accountability of getting out and community policing is on them, not on the society, not on the citizens at all.
What is your
Sorry.
take on and I'm asking for the people who weren't on the last call and who are new to this conversation that we're having. I actually found, Facebook does the 5 years ago your post was. And so 5-6 years ago, no, probably 4 or 5 years ago, I had put up a post specifically talking about how if we police our own communities, we don't have a need for outsiders to come in and police our communities.
Right. Mm-hmm.
What is your take on that?
Well, I think that was one of the layers that the Black Panthers of the 70s actually encompassed. They provided that necessary policing and the accountability to their own people because the benefits were like astronomical. Not only do I have this outside entity who could be a threat to my own society's my own community's well-being, but then I also on the other end have one less person to even think about in those situations. One less person, one less account, one less mom that I have to worry about her telling me later on that her son's rights are being violated because I'm sitting there witnessing it. I'm sitting there making sure that this gonna go smooth. Yeah, bro, you was wrong, so this was gonna happen. Yeah. Whatever it is, that's what's gonna happen. And we can better articulate and talk to our own race of people.
Right.
Nobody but us. And even what I'm saying is even if you don't have a kind of a bias layer on a person, like police, they have not only their race, but they also have things that they're gaining and the knowledges and the procedures that they're gaining in the police department at that academy. So now, not only are you meeting a Black man or whatever, but you're meeting a Black man who has this other layer that could be right or wrong, justified or not. But if I'm there as a non-biased Black person, or my only bias is the fact that you're Black too, I can talk to you in a more, calm and endearing kind of way. I care about you. You a king, I'm a king. You a queen, I'm a queen. I'm gonna talk to you in that manner, hopefully, right? Then just you being a number, or me profiling you, or me having some kind of ulterior motive.
Right. So there's a question that came in. There are good police, and it sounds like during your career you were one. How do you respond to the effort to defund the police and the generalization of all police?
Ooh, let's go with a news flash. Ooh, whoa. This might ruffle some feathers just a little bit.
I already know where
and
you're
I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it for the purpose of ruffling feathers. I'm going to say it for the purpose of accountability. So, the title of a good cop and the title of a bad cop. I feel that the bad cops that we're seeing, that we're talking about, the ones that we're angry at right now, because we've seen them on the screens, these videos and all that kind of stuff. We've said that because we see their actions, correct? Cool.
Right.
So the other cops that we're saying are good cops that are not doing those things that we're seeing the bad cops do, if they're not holding those quote unquote bad cops accountable, if they're not getting the supervisor or quote unquote telling on those officers, so sorry. They are also bad cops. I'm gonna give you a better way of saying it or understanding it.
Okay.
If you commit a crime, the person that's with you, right, or the person that's aiding in you leaving or aiding in commission of the crime. What is that called?
Aiding and abetting, or accomplice,
Oh,
complicit.
right. Oh, so if it works on the other side of the law, why wouldn't it work on this side that we're speaking of right now?
Right.
The same accountability, it stands.
Right.
You witnessed it. You were there. You could have did something about it. You could have held somebody accountable to it. So until you're doing that, I would challenge every cop who thinks that they are a good cop to change the perspective of how their silence looks like to citizens that are looking at them as, listen, you're wearing the same uniform.
Mm-hmm.
The same uniform. If I see 50 gang members or what I perceive to be gang members on that corner, and I approach them, and 25 of them, after a conversation, they admit that they gang members, and the other 25 is like, nah, bro, I'm just wearing the same colors as them. But y'all look all the same. Y'all look the same. So who's who?
Right.
I'm sorry. That's my pet peeve.
Well,
So,
we already had this conversation a couple times, so I'm like, I'm just gonna let you
the
go.
Police officers, the reform or the defunding, the defunding of the police, it encompasses a lot of general things. But I think the citizens or the different communities be able to say and articulate to their local department, how can these funds that you have be better allocated in our communities? How can you serve us better with the millions and millions of dollars that you have? And yes, some of the funds go to some of these departments' protections, which not all departments have, which are the unions. Not every department has one. The city of Atlanta didn't have one.
Okay.
So that money does go to them as well. But on the other hand, the other funds that, used to be very, very prevalent in other neighborhoods, which were like PAL, you had the football and the baseball and the
softball. I played softball and
PAL. All those things helped with community-based relations with police. So who better to articulate that than the citizens that live in the neighborhood?
Yeah.
They can say it. They can say, yeah, y'all been using the money for that. We don't need that no more. We need these things.
Right. Demilitarizing the force, right?
Some of those things as well. But more specifically, just things that serve us. Serve us. If you want to better understand our needs or, just whatever they are, you would be surprised that some of these crimes or stuff wouldn't even be committed. For us to even need you to even come to our neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's just one way.
Okay. So there's you mentioned some of the like excessive force and things like that. You brought up like a chokehold. What is your take? There's a ban on chokeholds now. I know in the Bay Area there's a ban, and it's supposed to be no longer being used within 30 days. So I know that the police department's kind of scrambling for how they're going to train to use a different strategy or whatever they're going to do.
There's no strategy about it. Now, listen, never in my tenure as a police officer ever did I choke somebody. That's excessive. There's no reason for me to restrict your windpipe or deprive you of oxygen. Listen. So that's a start. That's a great thing that they specified, one thing. But I think it's more a question of how can we better arm the police to not even have to use that as a viable, choice at all.
Right.
Like nothing even related to that.
Right.
At all.
Okay.
At all. Like, why was that even your go-to mental Rolodex? You weren't trained in jiu-jitsu or grappling or ground fighting. So you're just seeing something that you saw on TV, but you don't know the ramifications of it. You didn't know when to let go. You didn't know when that person was limp and they weren't moving anymore. Why are you still choking them? Well, you weren't supposed to be choking them from the beginning. You had no cause for choking them in the beginning. Oh, but because you didn't work out. Oh, you weren't, up to date on your PT qualifications that were, there at the beginning of the beginning and the end of the academy, but you've been on 10, 15 years. So, that you was out. Oh, I got you. So now you used your body weight because you had nothing else. You wasn't strong.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I know in a previous conversation, you kind of said that, you trust more in your hands more than you do your gun, right?
Or anything else that was on my gun belt.
Mm-hmm.
Not only limited to the firearm, but I mean, a taser is made by a human, correct?
Yes, it is.
So humans are not perfect. What makes me think this thing that I've been taught will be the end all be all is going to work all the time?
Right.
Do you know that the only way our tasers or police issued tasers work is if it makes contact, both prongs, the positive and the negative, make contact with your skin. If they don't, because of your baggy clothing or anything of that nature, it will render itself ineffective. And if you don't have any other Rolodex information after that to use or, gain compliance from this person, then you're going to do things like you see in a lot of these multiple videos that are coming across your TV screens and social media.
So earlier I sent you a video of this black man being stopped outside of Walgreens waiting on Western Union, and a cop came on the scene, didn't know what was going on, and tackled him to the ground to arrest him when he wasn't being arrested. I'm not sure if he was being detained or if they were just questioning him for investigation. I don't know what the situation was, but it resulted in him having broken ribs. When you saw that video, what did you think?
Yeah, so number one, I trying to recall, I heard some of the verbiage and some of the verbal commands that the officer was using, but I don't believe they gave him the reason for the stop. If they did, it was very limited, or maybe it wasn't as audible as everything else that was going on. But yeah, so I'm responsible for any injuries that you sustain while I'm trying to get your compliance or detain you. So how you fall, what you fall on, I should have made very detailed notes of that prior to. Now, of course, that's very difficult, but I'm held to a higher standard. So I have to take all that into consideration. If it's a bed of thorns, if it's a rock and you hit your head on it, I'm responsible. You were in my custody while you sustained that injury. So that's going to be a sticky situation. And then I don't think he was actually the person they were looking for.
He was not.
Yeah, exactly. So because somebody fits a description, that's why you have to, when you're detaining them, and you can detain them by putting them in the back of your police car or having them sit Indian style on the concrete, where obviously they can't move that easily, or sit on their hands or something like that. Or the officer, they could have did those things. So because they didn't do that, they left themselves in this gray area where, it was almost their fault.
Yeah, it was their fault.
It was yours. Right. It was their fault for not number one, not really listening to the description of the suspect. Number two, not putting that person in question in a better detaining position while they further their investigation. And then they wouldn't have to double back, nor would they have to put their hands on him in that manner. Right. Because if you're a regular citizen, not a regular citizen, any citizen, you're like, what the hell? I didn't do any of this. What are you talking about? I just walk from the store that I walk from every day.
Right.
So, crazy time we're living in.
It is. Got a couple questions for you. What about the blue code? Police are always having the back of their brothers. Snitches get stitches. It will always be the cop's word over the civilian unless we have hard evidence. And even then, it's still hard.
So why do you think I spent so much and that person, you know, that asked the question, why do you think I spend so much time articulating, escalating the accountability ladder, the accountability ladder,
Mm-hmm.
the accountability
Let me write that
ladder,
down.
because that is the most important weapon that cannot be used by you in that moment, but for later on. So the 911 dispatcher, not in all these cases, knew all the details of what's going on. 911 dispatcher or supervisor did not know and wasn't privy to all the things that were going on with those regular officers that were in those scenarios or in those situations. Had they been there, I would almost bet that those layers of accountability would have worked in those victims' favors.
Mm-hmm.
Period. And until we're able or willing to use these golden nuggets, we're going to probably continue to be the victims of these other officers.
Right.
So try it. If, God forbid, you get into a situation where your rights are being violated by a police officer.
So I mentioned on the last panel that my friend Lataro and we had done some community work with police officers and around like orientations and things like that. And I was given a challenge coin.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I was told, like, you know, this coin, when you see an officer, when you show them your challenge coin, like you can challenge them for a coin, or you can just show them that you have one, and it lets them know like you're kind of a good civilian. If they don't have one, then it may imply, like, the whole idea is like if you're a good police officer, then you carry your challenge coin with you. And so for me, I keep it, and I get talked about it. I keep it in my dash. Don't laugh at me.
Okay.
Don't laugh at me. But I keep
All
it
right
in my dash so that if I get
Everybody
pulled
wish
over,
they had a challenge coin. If somebody go Google that challenge coin.
but
Okay.
like seriously, I keep it on my dash because if I get pulled over, I want the officer to see like, oh, there's a challenge coin from my department right there, right? So that they would give me the benefit of the doubt and maybe not give me a ticket. I have been called Jakes. Oh, you messing with the Jakes, you the ops, you the whatever, because of my challenge coin. It's like, because you know, it's a coin that looks like a badge. And
Okay.
so that has been my line of defense, and I don't think, based on what you're saying, it's not good enough, right?
Yeah. There was once upon a time also that I you know, speaking of this blue code, there's the Thin Blue Line stickers that, you know, you can buy them off eBay or, you know, Google any other place to find them. And they were for people that were you know, say they showed support for police officers. And I started telling people about it just as, you know, as a recommendation, so that yes, when that officer comes to or stops your car, that they would see, okay, I'm dealing with a police officer in the car, or a person who loves the police, or they got a family member that, you know, is in the police department.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, because also criminals have learned it as well.
Okay.
So that kind of flattened the curve with the effectability of it all.
Okay, because
But yeah, so yeah, I never heard of the challenge coin. That's the first time I've ever heard of that. What is it called?
it's a challenge coin, and so
Challenge coin.
you know,
Yeah,
you
never
only
heard
give
of
it to people who really, you know, like you said, are like related or have some type of connection, so that
Got you.
people know.
Gotcha.
Okay, this is our last question from our attendees. Can you give your insight on racism within the force and how and why it has been able to exist for so long?
Okay, so quick answer. Racism in the police force is just as it stands in our society in every facet of the world. Every facet. So in your corporate America is reflective of the regular communities and societies and neighborhoods. The police department is the same way. Same way. It's no different. Just because you see places like Atlanta that, because of is a predominant predominantly occupied by Black people of our skin tones and ethnicity, that doesn't mean anything. It's still the powers that be that they answer to, and still there's still white people on the police forces, everywhere, including Atlanta. So the same racism and the same kind of jargon, the same kind of perspective on things still stands. And I think, yes, race has affected every police department as it pertains to how they treat the citizens and people in different neighborhoods.
Okay. Do you have time for one more question? One more question just came in.
Okay, come on.
Okay. How do we rationalize telling Black men who have been dealing with the unaddressed trauma of police disrespect and brutality to still comply?
Because my guess, and I'm gonna say sarcastically on purpose, but my guessing is that you want them to live. You want your Black kings or young sons to grow up. You don't want them to grow up in the society that we're living in now. You want it to be better, but you want them to live nevertheless. So if you want that to happen, the first thing you're going to do is comply while interjecting in some of those other layers that you have now been equipped with, possibly using and executing, so that it can not only better your chances of survival, but also better your chances of the police officer reform based on your dictation or your in your articulation of all the details and actions that that officer is doing or not doing, and then them being held to that higher standard with the 911 operator and the supervisor.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to get ready to end the call. I want to, you talking about raising broken men, comply or possibly die. Got it. Woo. Lots of wows. Great job. Thank you. This has been very helpful. I want to just kind of recap. So when pulled over, you want to bring in a system of accountability. So you can do that by calling 911, being compliant, but calling 911 and asking for a supervisor. And, you can tell the police officer or not. The Fourth Amendment protects us from all unlawful search and seizures that extends to your car. So your glove compartment, your trunk is locked. If you're asked to step out of your car, only if you're asked to step out of your car, then you get out of your car, turn off the car, roll up the windows, lock the doors, and that prevents anyone from getting into your vehicle without a search warrant. When the police come, you do not have to open the door of your home just because they're at the door. You can, you said this last time, but I'm going to say this anyway. When you are presenting your ID and insurance and documentation, you can do that with by just rolling the window down enough to put that through. About 15 minutes is appropriate for a detainment that doesn't end in arrest. And you can just walk away. You can say, if you haven't had your Miranda rights read to you and been told why you're being arrested, then you can go. Remember, if your rights are still being violated and you've been compliant, remember as much as possible while violation is happening. If you see others' rights being violated, get as much evidence as possible. Call 911, ask for a supervisor. And just make sure you take advantage of the accountability ladder. And the sidewalk is not the place to hold court. People are saying, great, thank you, informative information, necessary information.
One more thing.
Yes.
One more thing.
Yes.
All my Black people on here, I know that me as well as everybody else on this Zoom call are very emotional. We were emotional before we saw all these things, and we will be emotional and continue to be emotional throughout our lives. When we are encountering police officer involved situations, let's try to turn the dial down on our emotions. Be practical. Think about my rights, because number one, I'm a Black person before everything. Okay? So I'm accountable to that. And I'm also accountable to the knowledge that I now have to dial down my emotions, comply, make sure the accountability ladder has been raised, and then not think about the judge and the jury right in that situation. Think about the later on situation for our kids, your sons and daughters. And that's it.
Well, Price, I want to thank you. Everyone in the
You're welcome.
comments are
My pleasure.
saying, you know, thank you, very insightful. Thank you for pulling this together. Thank you for the great advice. Thank you for that information coming from someone who looks like us. So thank you. Again, this webinar was
You're welcome.
recorded, so I will. I have the email address of everybody who came in, and I will make sure that you are notified when the video is available. Thank you so much for your time, and everybody have a great night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.